All right, here we go. The Nick Bob Podcast is brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors. Pella of Omaha and Lincoln wants every homeowner to have the best quality windows and doors, and they're willing to bet $100 on it. Call the Omaha or Lincoln showroom or go to PellaOmaha.com to find out how you can get $100 and new windows and doors starting at $122 a month. We're also brought to you by the Brickway Cut Spike Lucky Bucket family. For the YouTube audience, got an assortment of, we got these Brickway Pilsners, got a couple of Cut Spike bourbons, this Brickway bourbon as well. Just fantastic brewery and distillery. Check them out. Omaha, La Vista area, 4 blocks south, 120th and Giles. And we are brought to you by Peerless Energy Systems for any and all air compressor needs. Go to peerlessenergy.com. That's peerlessenergy.com. All right, Bo Robert Ruud. We are recording this. It is almost 1:25 p.m. on Tuesday here.
Yep.
Real quick, have you had any as the days have come and gone here since the Indiana, the Bloomington bombing, the massacre in the Hoosier State? What are you feeling better about?
It got a name. I thought I've heard people call it the Big Noon.
The Big Noon blowout. The Big
Noon blowout.
The Big Noon blowout. Yeah. There's a lot of things you can. Getting harassed by the Hoosiers. I mean, there's a lot of plays on words you can do there.
It's kind of, maybe that's leading into the end of our pod. Yes, but yeah, it's kind of, it may encounter one of our topics today.
Coming up on the pod, I am going to get into the most shocking losses of the last 30 years. I wrote down 10. And some of these, when you go back and look at certain stats, you're like, wowzers.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to start with this. We usually in these midweek pods, we do the club. Who's in the club?
Yeah.
And I got a lot of tweets, a lot of emails during the game because of Nebraska getting crushed 56-7. They're like, club's got to be closed this week. It does kind of feel like the health inspector came through and
he did. He came in and
said, "We're shutting this thing down. You're
shutting the club down for the week.
For a week." It kind of does it not kind of feel wrong to have anybody in any club after a performance like that?
So this is where maybe the health inspector needs to come shut it down, is right? Because what kind of action are we going to see at the club tonight? Like, is the club hopping tonight? I don't know if it is. So maybe we need to shut it down for a week. Blessing in disguise, revamp and see where we're at next week.
And so here's what I want to do, because the health inspectors come through and shut it down for a week. And I feel like as club owners, you and I, it is hard in good conscience to open the club, to have our VIP guys in there. And as we said, you're not going to get not a lot of partying going on after that. Yeah. Maybe we turn it into a spoken word club.
I mean, it's a
catching kickoffs at the one. It's no fun for Raiden. They needed Raydon that we did it spoken club.
We've got it's a great space, everybody. You should really come, but it won't be a club tonight. It's a spoken word.
It's spoken word. It's spoken word. People can come and deliver their poems on.
People with berets. And
tiny glasses, and a lot of turtlenecks.
A lot of
turtlenecks.
No alcohol, mostly just coffee.
All coffee, turtlenecks, and berets. That's what the club is this week. With spoken
slam poetry.
Okay, so then this week's exercise is, who needs to be in the club? Like, for Nebraska to maximize and be the very best version of themselves and to get to 8, 9, 10 wins. Okay,
so we're saying who needs to be in the club?
Who do we need to be like, this dude is in the club?
Well, let me start with this, okay? This might be a little, I don't know if it's way out of left field, but I think there was one guy that if the health inspectors didn't shut down the club, Canton, Ohio would be walking to the front of the line with Dylan. They would probably be the first two in the door if the health inspector didn't shut down.
Good call. As guys who have we got him into Canton, We were up there with him as we helped unveil his statue.
He got the can before he got to the club.
That's it. So as the Thomas Fidone fan club's members here, shouts out. He was the only guy. I literally thought about being like the only guy that I felt like did anything in that game was Fidone.
Yeah.
So okay, but big shouts out to Fidone.
Yeah, it felt like Fidone finally started like getting his like the Fidone we've been kind of expecting, like, you know, using those long arms,
yes,
you know, catch. He made some nice runs after the catch, but he just seemed like he was dialed in.
Right.
He was ready to go.
He was getting open. He was making plays.
He was competing.
Yes. Even what you said, even on the one where he whiffed for Harburg to score, they go right back to it on the end around to Barney and he pancakes the guy. Yeah. So agree. Big shouts out to Fidone. Fidone, I apologize. Like,
we're sorry the club is closed this week, but you would have been in.
You would have been in the club. Yeah. Okay. Just so you know. Who needs to be in the club?
Dylan, easy, obvious.
Dylan number one, still obvious.
Yeah.
Number two, I still have Ty Robinson.
Got to have Ty. I think he is the leader of the defense in terms of physical presence and sort of like, it's no coincidence when he plays well, they play well.
Right. Okay. The third, then I have my fourth and fifth selections are like interesting to kind of get into, but my third selection, I wrote down one name, but there was another name I was considering. I wrote down Gifford, but I also wanted to throw the polar bear in there.
I would put the polar bear over Gifford because I think the D line in general just sets the tone. Like, if you can't run it on us and we, you know, like those guys are setting the tone in such a way that, I mean,
as you know, as a linebacker, I mean, everything when you're playing behind Carricker and Jay Moore, and it's your life's a lot easier. Like,
it just matters more. It's like there's no coincidence why like good D linemen should make more money than good linebackers, even though like it's like I still think the linebackers are like they're the most they're the most true form of a football player, defensively at least, and the same way running back is. But like there's a reason why left tackles, quarterbacks, and defensive linemen make the most money. It's like
they're the most important.
There's only so many of them, right? They're just usually built physically. There's only so many. They're that big and strong that can do what you need to do, and they change everything, right?
No doubt.
Where you can have a worse linebacker, but you can't have a worse D lineman and be just as effective.
The reason I put Gifford down is I feel like the secondary from a tackling standpoint, when it's been bad, that's been the common denominator. So, and it's not been Gifford really.
Not really.
I wrote him down because I'm like, man, that position group, when things have slid a little bit, they've been a huge part of it. And so I wanted to have a position group or someone from that position group, but I wrote down Gifford or Polar Bear.
I think it might be fair to say both, actually.
Okay. So let's see, we're going to talk through this. The last two names I wrote down were Nair and Dowdell. And again, hear me when I say this. I'm saying who needs to be in the club. What would be great is if we came on this pod next week, the week after, the USC game, the Wisconsin game, if we were sitting here going, gosh dang it, you know who's in the club is Dante Dowdell or Emmett Johnson. There's a reason we put those guys in a stinky Uber that's hot with a talkative Uber driver, because we know that Nebraska has to get their run game going and somebody needs to emerge from there.
Yeah, I think to have that second or third presence from an offensive player, it makes we're in a good spot if that's who's in the club, right?
That's right.
That's right. And I think that's where you're right. Like, we got to have something else besides Dylan in the club. Like, we are not a balanced team. Like, it's good if our defensive players are in there. It means like, at least, hey, we're probably competitive.
Yep.
The reason why we're shut down this week, we weren't competitive defensively, right?
Yeah, you're right.
The offense was bad, but we've been kind of bad at times before, but the defense carried us.
Yeah, you're right.
And now they didn't carry us.
As you say that, like, in all reality, with how this team is built, you probably could have Dylan and then 4 defensive players, because like any way you slice it, I sit here and I say I want Dowdell in the club. The likelihood of Dowdell ever being in the club is probably fairly low at this point based on what he's shown us. But
We need Dowdell or Nair to do it. We need
Nair.
We need one of those two as an offensive presence to be in the club.
So what's interesting is we have said the guy that has played the best on the defense, I didn't even really consider putting him in the need to be the club.
That's right.
In Bullock.
That's right. I think he's an important part of our defense.
That's just kind of weird if you say it out loud, though, you know?
But my point about just the way, in my mind, like, if you don't got a D-line, like, unless it's Ray Lewis, right? This is John Bullock. Like, he's playing well.
Yep.
But he's not Ray Lewis.
Right. Or
So
Levante David or whatever.
Him playing at, like, a high level for him is still not as important as your D-line's got to be good. Or our secondary's got, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think we can have a John Bullock replacement that's like a B version of that. And it hurts us less than if we lose Polar Bear.
You can have an I can't believe it's not butter. You can have a I can't believe it's not Bullock.
It's actually not butter, but
is this butter? Is this Bullock? No, it's not. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's not Bullock.
Really?
That's what
I can't. Yeah.
Well, no, you brought up the Jerry Maguire thing. Like, if this is empty, this doesn't matter. If this being your defensive line is empty, this doesn't matter. The linebackers, all that stuff.
Mean,
so
we shouldn't. I'm a former linebacker, so like, I believe in the position. I believe but in terms of absolutely prioritizing on this team and this situation,
I'm with it.
I think that's just how I feel. I feel like the D-line setting the tone is more important right now than our linebacker play.
I agree with you.
Now.
Where are we at on the Oscar award-winning Zaire Wright, Tommy Hill? Do we need any of those guys? Like, does it go back to
the club has only got 5 spots?
No, but I'm saying, like, I'm trying to throw all these names out there.
You got to pick one, and I think you said Gifford, and the value of Gifford when he is playing great is he cleans up the mess. It's kind of his role, like the Red Rover spot, like clean up the junk, clean up other people's mistakes. Like, when he's playing right, I think he does that. It just feels like, I don't know, like, we can't say we need it to be Singleton. We need to be like, we just kind of know that's not.
Yeah, there also has to be like
you could make a case for Sierra or Tommy. Could make a case.
You got to be like, I can't, like, Singleton's just not playing at the level of being in the club. So it's, we're not going to sit here and be like, if this was the 96 Bulls podcast, we'd be like, Jed Bushler needs to be the best player.
We need Jed Bushler to be ahead of Jordan. Like, what are we talking?
Longley, Bushler, if those guys play well, who's going to beat them? It's like, well, come on, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the question is, we got Raiola lock, Ty lock. I am such a, if you were like, you convince me so easily in life with things.
But wait, who needs to be in the club? Does Fedoni need to be in the club over
like Nair or Banks?
Banks? You know what I'm saying? Because the reality is, we got 5 spots. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like,
well, this
this is the need versus the who's in. Like, Fedoni would be in, but who do we need? Is need still not Fedoni? Is the need at receiver?
My inclination needs to be one of the 2 receivers, Nair or Banks.
Okay.
So as we're talking this out, my thought on who needs to be in the club is Dylan Raiola, Ty Robinson, Gifford, Polar Bear, and then pick one of Dowdell, Nair, and if you want to throw Fedoni in there, whatever, for that 5th spot. Or do you agree? Like, because you've convinced me kind of in thinking like the holy trinity of the defense is to the Ty Robinsons, to the Polar Bears, and to the Giffords. Amen. So you need those guys.
That puts us at 4 with Dylan.
And then Dylan. So then for that 5th spot, are you cool with having those 4? Or do you want to? Do you need to take one of Polar Bear or Gifford out of there and slide Nair and Dowdell in, or slide Dowdell and Fedoni in?
I think you slide.
You want to slide Gifford out?
Right now, I feel like we need Fedoni, and I think we need a running back. Like,
okay.
I almost think like
that's kind of what I think too. That's why I wrote it. So let's do, here it is.
They're not in.
This is need. This is just like need. So Dylan Raiola, Ty Robinson, Polar Bear. Do we want it to be between Nair, Dowdell, and Fedoni?
Well, I think it doesn't matter as much as like we can say it. I don't think we even need to write down because it's like
it's not official.
It's not official. They didn't. Yeah.
So that's what it's.
Yeah.
I like that. I think. And a lot of this is also out of like respect for, like, a part of me wants to leave Fedoni and Gifford out because I kind of like believe that those guys are going to be
they're
like
high floor guys,
right?
They're high floor. So I know what you mean, but it's also, I don't know. I think it's an interesting exercise, but in reality is like, you got to, and like some of these guys, like they haven't played into it, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like Fedoni just played himself into it, and that's what matters.
I agree. But I'm going to say this is where I would arrive. I would arrive at Dylan, Ty, Polar Bear, Nair, and Dowdell. That's where in who needs to if we are talking about Dowdell and Nair balling out.
Are we saying Judd Bushler but is Dowdell a Judd Bushler right now?
Probably.
So I don't even think
so is it unfair to?
It's unfair. It's far.
It's not realistic.
It's too far.
Okay.
Nair maybe, but Fedoni for sure. Nair's
what about what about are we allowing one catch at the 1 yard line on a kickoff to disrespect? I mean, we had Barney in the club or he was under consideration. I think we had him in the club after the Purdue game.
Barney would be a guy that I would say with Nair and Fedoni for sure would be a need guy. You could say because he's been in the club. Like I just think Dowdell has not played himself close to it.
This is Judd Bushler being one of the best
Emmett
players
Johnson,
on the 96
all
Bulls.
The running backs I feel that way about. And yeah, if you haven't touched the club yet, I don't think we can say you need to be in the club.
I like it. I don't know what we solved there, but I think we did. I think that was good.
Something happened there.
All right. Can we do this? We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but this is me channeling my inner Bill Simmons of most shocking Celtics losses of the last 30 years. 1970. Wilt came. No. Okay. So I wrote down because of 56-7 to Indiana and just the true surprise, the blowout fashion and the shocking nature of how it went down. I quickly this morning over a cup of coffee on my screened in deck went through and wrote down the 10 most shocking losses of the last 30 years. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
They're kind of not in order, but they're in chronological order. That was the word I was looking for. The first one's easy. 1996 Arizona State.
Okay, because I kind of wrote down, I just went through a list of my own like ones that that came to your head out. Yeah, and that one, when you think about it, that one for sure, because it was 19-0 coming off the greatest, back-to-back run you could imagine with like blowing out Florida. Like we were peak of our powers, right? We're at the peak.
Yes.
And then we get like,
think it for the youngins out there. Nebraska had come off playing in 3 straight national championship games. They could have easily. They're a errant field goal away from having a three-peat.
Yeah.
They in '95 in the moment even it was widely considered, and I still believe it is the greatest college football team of all time. And then Nebraska goes and loses 19-0. They got shut out for the first time in 51 games. I was surprised that I thought it would have been more. Apparently they got shut out in the 92 Orange Bowl.
Against Miami, yeah.
Yes. The loss also snapped several other incredible streaks. 26 straight wins, 37 consecutive regular season victories. The thing that is amazing going back and looking at it, did you remember Arizona State had 3 safeties?
Yeah, I remember it was a funky way. Yeah, it was a funky way. Yeah.
Can you imagine a game? 1 safety is pretty rare to see. 3 safeties.
Now my memory's lapsed though on how did they get the safety?
I know Amon Green. Amon Green fumbled one out of the end zone.
Yeah. Did we snap one?
I think there was an errant snap on another, and then maybe Frost just got sacked in the. I can't remember.
That was the picture paper. Maybe Frost getting sacked.
And this also, I mean, this was where also you people got to remember the whole journey of Scott Frost kind of begins here, where everybody was like, get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
And then he has his redemption back into 1997. But that one's easy. I know any real Husker fan, I was truly, as a young kid in Lincoln, Nebraska, it was God versus Nebraska. Nebraska wins. They were unbelievable how good they were.
And I think that's why the title of this list is the most shocking loss. To me, that was how I remember that more than anything. It was so shocking that you couldn't believe that we could. I mean, most games you're like, well, there's a chance we're going to lose. Like, there was no chance we were going to lose.
No.
And we got shut out.
So that one's easy. Second one I wrote down, 2001 Colorado 62-36.
That was my number one. Like, if you had to rank them in order, that's my number one. I think it is the game that has turned the tide on Nebraska ever since that moment, Nick. I really think
I agree.
People have smelled weakness in us. Something ripped at the fabric of Nebraska. We were untouchable for a long time. And something got ripped in that game. And I feel like we've been bleeding out ever since.
I agree.
And people have been taking advantage of us because Colorado, they figured something out about us and just gashed us. And ever since then, we've had this problem that I feel like was re-exposed against Indiana. We're like, things get away from us quickly. And then it becomes like a psychological thing with us. All goes back to this game.
Couldn't agree more. That this is the pivot point in the history of Nebraska football. Like, this game set the record for the most points given up in school history at the time. And again, for people, shocking because Nebraska was they were undefeated and they had the Heisman Trophy winner. And what's crazy is they go on to play Miami for the national title. That probably didn't help either. You play one of the other greatest college football teams of all time and you get rocked.
But think about that. The beginning of our downfall was the game before the national title.
That exactly. Think about that. With the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback.
Hard to believe
how things have changed.
But that's why for whatever reason, there was something about that game that was
unbelievable.
Like, the way the Arizona State game was shocking that we lost. This was like unfathomable that we gave up 62 points and couldn't play defense and didn't recognize ourselves. You went from the number one team in the country to we don't recognize ourselves.
It was, like you said, losing. Sure, Nebraska could maybe lose. Most people didn't believe they would lose because they were so confident. But the idea of getting blown out was not even within the realm of comprehension.
I would like to. I haven't looked through all the scores of the previous 30 years. I don't know that we got blown out for 30 years.
I think
you're talking like late 60s, 70s.
Basically from 19.
Did Oklahoma blow us out in the 70s or 80s anytime? Like, maybe. I need to look that up. But I don't think we got blown out for like decades.
Right.
So when you finally get blown out of nowhere, when you're the number 1 or 2 team in the nation,
you're like, whoa.
It's almost like you don't know what world you're in.
Yes. So it was, again, shocking.
Yeah. It'd be my most shocking game in the history of the program. Now.
Okay, I'll lean on you for this because now again, I told you I was going in chronological order. It feels like there has to be a game from the beginning stages of the Callahan era. We could do the Mitch Sherman 2004 Texas Tech 70-10. It's got to be
Southern
that, right?
Miss. Southern Miss.
Yeah. Yes.
Was a home loss against a team that wasn't as good. But it's Texas Tech. Texas Tech was another like seminal moment where we lost to a team that we couldn't believe we were like. Colorado was a better team than Texas Tech. Texas Tech was like known as
Colorado was still a top. I want to say they were 14th in the country or something like that. This was Texas Tech, and this is was Leach there yet?
Leach was there. This was
this was probably like early Leach.
Leach.
Texas Tech wasn't like was an afterthought.
Yeah,
and to give up 70 was like astonishing. So I got 2004 Texas Tech. The next game I wrote down, I think 2007 USC.
Ooh.
Because, and maybe not, I don't know, like.
I actually didn't have that, so I want to hear your take.
Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that like, call it a 8-month period or 10-month period.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to act like when that season kicked off or that game unfolded, that Nebraska had been this version of themselves. And this was just like, finally it unraveled. No, so this game would have happened in September. And so 9 months before that, Nebraska was in Kansas City playing for the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma. In that year, they had the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year in Zach Taylor. That defense in 2006 was good.
Yeah.
Nebraska was ranked. So I say all that to say, I don't know if yes, USC was this juggernaut at the time, but I remember being at that game. I don't know how you felt going into the game. Like, you couldn't have thought, oh, we're going to go get like completely
we
hammered
actually,
here.
You're very right in the sense of our attitudes were, we were a ranked team. We're in the top 25, and we thought we were going to be, in the running for the league title. That's kind of where our mind was. We were we were preparing all offseason to beat USC. Like, very much like that was the mindset. Like, it's not like, I hope we can play. It was like we were thinking about beating them.
Yes.
Right? We got Sam Keller. He played him very well at Arizona State. He had like the game of his life against them.
Yep.
And we'd won our first 2 games. We beat Wake Forest at Wake Forest, and they ended up, I think, winning their conference.
Yep.
We didn't even know at the time that they were that good, but we went in the road and we won. But we didn't know what we were. We thought we were good. We didn't know that we weren't so good.
Agree. And real quick, back on it's you know what you know now, sort of. But people got to remember, Sam Keller was supposed to be the deal.
He looked the part. He talked the part.
I remember I met him at the Red Fox. Remember the Red Fox on Wednesday nights? He had those big giant beers. And I met Sam, and Sam had a presence about him. Like, he looked the part.
He lived it. He was the quarterback. He had
in the 1990s in the 1990s movie, the quarterback walks into the bar, and it was Sam Keller, like, great hair, handsome guy. He had like a hot girl with a beautiful girl on his side. Like, I was like, wow, this is it.
I'm convinced that's why he got the job. I mean, he did play USC tough at Arizona State. He was, I think he was like an average quarter, like in terms of wins, losses.
Right.
But Joe Gans outplayed him in that spring. And Joe was upset when he didn't get the job, and he was probably rightfully so, because he outplayed him. But Sam had
all of the stuff around him.
It would tell you, and even the guys that were there, it wasn't obvious that Sam wasn't the guy, because he sort of just looked like the guy.
And he was it's how you're packaged and presented kind of matters. Yeah. Remember, USC was on top. This was the guy that at Arizona State, dude, he had a game where he really tore USC apart. And you're like, oh wow, okay, so he tore USC apart. He looked the part, all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you guys hammer Nevada to start the year. You win 20-17 at Wake Forest. And here comes September 15th. USC comes to town. And game day was there. It was like, it was a shocking for the way you lose 49-31.
Brian Cushing, Maluga, Clay Matthews was a backup who, like, we first saw, who's that guy? It's like,
no, they were
Keith
loaded.
Rivers was a top 10. I mean, they had 4 or 5 first rounders on that defense. Like, it was, once you played them, you're like, oh yeah. They're all of that. They're good.
Okay, next game I wrote down. Another game I watched with you. See, I almost think this is up there for me. The 2012 Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin.
I had that one written down too.
70-31. A couple of things. Keep in mind, Wisconsin was only there because this was the year. Remember, this was before it was legends and leaders.
Yeah.
And Ohio State, because of the Tressel stuff, was ineligible, and Penn State, because of the Jerry Sandusky stuff, was ineligible, and Michigan was down. And so Wisconsin at 7-5, and Nebraska had beat them earlier in the year.
That's the part why it's shocking. That's right.
And here comes this game, and I couldn't believe, looking it up, Nebraska gave up 539 yards rushing. It was the first time I'd ever really seen a jet sweep look like the most unstoppable play I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Not only was that loss shocking, but it was one of the first, it was like, you talk about like in 2001, the Nebraska story, kind of like there was a pivot point there. That's the game, I think, where everything changed for Pelini.
Yeah, I do too.
Where because that loss was what started the clock for the beginning of the end for Bo.
Yeah, it's too bad with Pelini that he had 09, 10, he had 3 cracks at a conference title, which I think gives you staying power, and 2 of them in the Big 12. I mean, gosh, it seemed like we had it, right? Yeah. We had 2 games.
Had a lead against Oklahoma in 2010, and then the 1 second game against Texas.
Yeah. And then this one was, though, like you said, it was a team you'd beat that came in at 7-5, and you just you let it slip
70,
away.
Get 70 hung on you. Okay, Next one. 2014 at Wisconsin, 59-24. This was the game. Melvin Gordon ran for 408 yards. He set a Division I single game rushing record in that game. To watch a human run for 408 yards on his own was truly astonishing. The other thing that was crazy looking back at this game, Nebraska was up 10-3 at the end of the first quarter. They're up 10-3. Wow. Wisconsin fumbled. I thought I read that they fumbled 3 times early in the game. Yeah. So it wasn't one of those games where it was like from the jump, it was just like the levee broke and it was on, but 408 yards. Holy crap.
Dang.
So this is where it gets hard. The next one I wrote down, I don't know if I really believe it, but I wrote it down. 2016 at Ohio State, 62-3. I have this memory of you being in at that game.
I was.
Yeah.
I was.
But remember, Tommy Armstrong got hurt, like maybe even on the first possession of the game.
He threw a pick 6 the first possession, and then he got hurt. And we're like, it's gonna be a bad game. Yeah.
But even though the reason that, I don't know, this one's tough because it depends on maybe where you fell on how Nebraska was 7-1 at the time. Yeah. They had just come off an overtime loss at Wisconsin. They were top 10 to 15 ranked in the country, but there was this feeling like the wheels could fall off with this team at any moment, and this just started that process. I'm not totally married to that one, but anytime you lose 62-3,
I'm not married to it because I felt like the 2000s and the Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Big 12 championship, I think that already laid the groundwork of like we let this happen. So like it wasn't as shocking to me on that one. Even the second Wisconsin one, because they'd done it to us before a little bit.
Agree. You notice here, but here, what's amazing is as I go in chronological order, they all get less and less shocking. And you know why? Because of what has happened before.
That's right. It's sort of, the shock was wearing off more and more. And that's why even, we'll get to it now, but.
So I'm not in love with it, but I wrote it down.
Yeah.
The next one I wrote down, the 2019 Minnesota game on the road. Minnesota won 34-7. Do you remember this was the hoodie game? Remember Frost after the game? There was this whole like, we got guys going out in warmups with a hoodie on. And in my day, if you would have wore, he did that whole thing. And a couple of things that made this one shocking is Nebraska blew Minnesota out in 2018, Frost's first year. Also, Nebraska had started 4-2 that season. So keep in mind, heading into that game, over the course of Nebraska's last 12 games, so the final 6 games of Frost's first year and the first 6 games of Frost's second year, Nebraska was 8-4. So it felt like after that, like Murphy's Law 0-6 start, like they had kind of like found themselves. You got Wandale Robinson, you got Adrian Martinez, you got, you have this.
And they weren't a great team.
And they weren't a great team at all.
And that's where Yount Then they give it to Yant, and he like fell down on the 4th and 1, and we just
not. And so, but it felt like that game took the wind out of Nebraska's sails, and everything unraveled that season. They finished 1-4 in their last 5 games. Pretty shocking.
Yeah,
pretty shocking. Next one I wrote down was the 2022 Georgia Southern game. Nebraska, they get beat 45-42, and Frost gets fired after the game.
I didn't think about that one. That's a good call.
And then obviously the last one is the 2024 game at Indiana, 56-7. And I really think this one's gonna, depending on what happens here over the course of the end of this season and the next year and beyond, that sort of a loss to that kind of a team really hasn't happened in a long time.
Well, it didn't really happen like that to the Frost era teams.
Not really.
That's the weird part.
Maybe it's like COVID at Ohio State got away from them. Ohio State in 2019 got away from them with Chase Young and Justin Fields. But again, we're talking about Ohio State. We're talking about, this was Indiana, and they beat you 56-7. So I do think this is one of the more, as I watch that game, again, because we're callous now with all of the losses that have happened over 30 years, that nothing is as shocking as 96 Arizona State, 2001 Colorado, just because of where the program is at now. But I thought Nebraska was going to win that game, and they lost 56-7.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a game we look back on as, I think there's 2 worlds, right? The world that I think is going to happen is I'm still a Matt Rule believer, and I think Matt Rule's going to do the right things, and this program is going the right direction. We got Dylan, we got a lot of things. Like,
agree.
I think it's going to be a game we go, man, what was that blip? And then there's the other world where this is the not so great story from here, right? Like it's more the same, right? So there's 2 worlds that kind of happen after this game. I think it's going to be the positive world. I really do. I think Matt Rule and Dylan and the guys, they're going to go in the right direction in the coming years. But like this also, like, it's hard not to see that this is like some of the same stuff
totally
in there.
Totally. Yeah, I agree there, because some of these losses were turning point or markers of the beginning of the end. Again, you and I are in it.
We don't think that.
I don't think that. And even if you do maybe think that, it's way too early to be having that sort of conversation or thought.
But when you look back at these, when you see the little moments, right?
You see these moments where you go, ooh, year 2, Frost, 34-7 at Minnesota. That one good.
But I could make the counter, like Callahan 70-10 Texas Tech.
That wasn't the beginning of the end.
That wasn't the beginning of the end.
Right.
That was a shock, a shock to the system. But it wasn't until 2007 that was the beginning of the end. Like,
agree.
You had to have USC and, Kansas. It's over.
Yes.
It's done.
Right.
But like, you can work yourself past it. You can grow and develop. That's part of building a program. Matt Rule is on year 2. He's only so many games in. Like, he's going to get his time. And he is growing this team. He's showing he's growing it. So as long as he does that, that's why I'm positive about it, because I'm seeing him do it. But like, let's not be real. This is a shock, but is it a turning point for the down spiral? Like,
and that's
I don't think that, but in all these cases, it's one or the other, right?
Agree.
So you just have to, you don't know. Time will tell. We're looking back now on time. We're looking back on these old games. Some of them were shocks. Some of them were actual turning points to the end of a coach's run. Okay,
to wrap this up, so I think that's a good way to put a bow on it.
I had a couple.
Okay, I wrote down see, what's hard is there's a difference between shocking in the way you lost versus just like shocking that the game, because a lot of the games I wrote down were blowouts.
Well, there's 2 ways to be shocked. You got killed
by
somebody, or
how it ended. Like,
you're really good and you got beat, whether it's by a point or it's by a lot. If you're the so for instance, I went way back. I didn't know there was a third, like the 19 so in 1984 we came off the Orange Bowl. We were the #1 team in the country, and we lost to some unknown Syracuse team.
Yeah.
Like the number 1 team in the country.
Right.
And lose like I think it was like the first or second game of the year. Like what? Like we just about won a national title and some no name beats the number 1 team in the country.
That doesn't happen.
Right. And so same way, 92 versus Iowa State. And then we talked about this in our Husker Classic series. They finally beat Oklahoma in 78. And then they go to Missouri the next week.
They partied too hard.
Hangover. They partied. Rick Burns was high knees. He was high knees in the club, and he would have been in the club for sure. He was doing the high knees.
Yes.
And he just was he partied too hard.
Partied too hard after beating 78 Oklahoma. But that
78 Oklahoma is like it's shocking. Not that we got blown out. It's shocking that you couldn't imagine a loss because you're so good.
Right.
There's the 2 shocks. Right.
That's true. Because I didn't go back that far. The only honorable mention ones I wrote down, and this is where it was shocking because of the end. The 2021 Michigan State game, we were in Vegas, the punt.
Yeah.
And I wrote down another game we were together in my parents' basement, 2015 at Illinois. Remember when they threw it on third down, and then and I'll never forget the game ends and you turn to me and say, Mike Riley was hired so that to have that loss not happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's there's a lot of different ways to be shocked.
Yeah.
But Indiana 56-7 is on that list.
I think it is. It's sort of a right in between the I guess it's more of a blowout because it's not like we're that good. We're not like a top 5 team. Like that's where, like you said, Arizona State, Syracuse, Colorado.
Yeah.
When you're the number 1 team in the country, loss of any kind to the wrong team, or especially a blowout loss to Colorado, is the most shocking. And that's why the Colorado is the most number 1 team in the country. It's not just you got beat by somebody you were supposed to beat. We got ran off the field.
Well, and for example, they didn't get run off the field, but if there was the Nick and Bo podcast in Tuscaloosa 20 years from now and they're doing this list, the 2024 Bama loss at Vanderbilt would be on that list for them.
No
loss
doubt.
to Vanderbilt? What?
No doubt.
Off of a decade plus long run of a reign of dominance that has been incredible.
That is probably you can't even put that off the Arizona State because they had Jake Plummer. It was like a pro quarterback.
Yes.
It's like losing to
I don't even know what it would
Vanderbilt.
be. Yes, it's Vanderbilt. There's no other way to put it. But so there you go. I figured that was kind of an interesting way to kind of think about that. Okay, we're going to rank concerns, and then we'll preview the Ohio State game. But first, I got to tell you about Pella Windows and Doors. Debbie and Vince, when they were working on my home, they helped find the perfect fit for our home during our free in-home consultation. And then we visit the local showroom there in Omaha. There's also one in Lincoln. And the showroom's great. You can actually physically see the window and door and touch it and open it and close it. Gives you a better sense of what you are putting into your home. And then the installation experts with Pella, they were amazing, man. They were on time. They are professional, courteous. They left our house cleaner than they found it. Call the Omaha or Lincoln showroom or go to PellaOmaha.com to find out how you can get $100 and new windows and doors starting at $122 a month. That's PellaOmaha.com. Okay, Bo. So I text you this. I kind of wanted to, and I'm sorry to have a negative slant to this pod, but when you lose 56-7, that's kind of where the conversation naturally goes. Ranking concerns, big concerns with this team. So I wrote down a bunch of things, and we're going to rank them in order. I wrote down special teams. I wrote down run game. I wrote down wide receivers getting open. I wrote down confidence, team confidence, and psyche. And then I wrote down, and this is kind of I almost need to be able to elaborate on it, a defensive slide, meaning we talked about how this is a defensive-led team, and for this team to probably be winning football games, they probably need it to be an elite, or at least close to elite unit. And are you concerned at all that it's maybe it's not, it's sliding away from being a top 10 defense to being a top 30 to 40 defense, and what that does to the trajectory of the rest of the season? And then I'm adding this one. Do we need to add offensive line, or is that too
Oh, this is what's hard about these kind of things. It's like
because they all play off each other a little bit. Like run, I guess
run game is offensive line.
So
right?
I'm gonna eliminate offensive line because to me, I want to kind of narrow it down to like finding a run game. So okay, I'll get started on concerns. Maybe this is I'm getting too into the intangible stuff. I think the number one thing I'm most concerned with is the team confidence and psyche.
Yeah, I that's what I ranked number one. Same thing. It's confidence and psyche because it's like it's more than just are you confident? It's like where's our resilience at? Like we said, this team's will was broke in the second quarter against Indiana, and it was visible to everybody in the stadium. And you go, whoa, like this is middle of the season and you're 5-1. Like it's we're trying to, I think we're all trying to understand that, guys talking about everybody's hanging their heads like, well, why? What do you, well, why? Like, why are we just a fragile team or what are we? So like, it's not just confidence. It's like, what is our whole like attitude towards like belief in in themselves and playing the game competitively, like all those things I think are the most important versus like, say wide receivers. It's like, because if that pales in comparison to that.
Because if those things are wrong, if they have lost confidence and their psyche's not good, then everything is going to erode.
Yeah,
you're right. You're like it's all going to not go well. But because even Ruud brought it up, and we've said like Ruud has talked about having to fight that like here we go again thing.
I know he said in the papers. I go that was God. It's weird that they're still thinking
still a thing. And you heard Jamari Butler, and sometimes I think we overdo certain comments after a game. Like these are 20. I don't want to do this, but like these are 21-year-old kids that are kind of like they get media trained and they just kind of are giving answers to get through the interview. Yeah. So I don't want to overdo it, but it is like for Jamari Butler to be like, we got guys that hang their head and lose confidence when things don't go well. I'm paraphrasing what he said here. But to me, I'm like, why? You're a defense that over the course of 19 games has been really stinking good. Why are you not confident?
That's what I don't know, Nick. I don't like, we all are kind of scratching our head. Like what happened that the season was over to him in the middle of the second quarter at Indiana? Like the game's not over. Like the quarterback hurt his thumb in the second quarter. Like,
right.
Like you should be like, we get to play against the backup the rest of the game, like somewhere along the line, they gave up like immediately.
Yes.
And I'm concerned with that. Like more than anything, the game, like you got to be competitive. Like Matt Rule always talks about focus on the next play. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think they did a pretty good job of that for most of the season. Like when you have a goal line stand in bad situations, they showed me like, we don't care. We'll just keep playing the game and we'll make stop after stop. And that's what I thought this team kind of was. Then comes Indiana and it's a couple things went wrong. Defense is hanging their heads. Dylan starts pressing because he has to. Like, what happened to one play at a time? Play the game, be competitive. Like it's all bizarre. Vanished quickly coming off a bye week. Strange.
And it's very strange. I don't understand that, especially the defense.
Yes.
They have no reason. They have actual tangible results in games to feel confident.
What about the goal line stand? What about the goal line stand? Did they forget that?
I don't understand. What about holding Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and those guys? How about goose egging them for a half and holding them to 10 points?
Dominating them. Like that was a domination.
Being the only team left before this week to not give up a rushing touchdown. Like what on earth did you, how did you all of a sudden, it'd be like Floyd Mayweather, like losing a round and being like, oh God. I must suck.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're 50-0. Like what? Like
I must not be able to beat this. Like I don't know what happened.
It's just bizarre to me. But I think whether it's the historical here we go again thing or just kind of what we witnessed with, for some reason, the defense losing confidence. The number one concern for me is the confidence and psyche of the team. At number two, I wrote down run game, but
establishing a run,
finding a way to run the ball. And this was something that I was concerned with heading into the year. I remember talking about this with you various times in the offseason, whether it was in the spring or before the year. Did everybody last year get lulled into a false sense of security with their ability to run the ball because they ran Harburg and Sims?
Yeah, when you run the quarterback, you always you get a one-up on everybody.
And I remember bringing up, like, when you take away Sims and Harburg's productivity running the ball, their straight up running back rushing attack was not great. Well, here we are. It's not great. So a part of me wants to, I want to put run game here at number 2, but then it feels we have gotten numb to special teams, by the way, of just like, because that will be
next no matter what.
Okay, so what do you want to put it to?
Here's why I'm good with run game.
Okay,
establish the run game, because the confidence psyche part, I think we're talking to the defense. A lot of it, right? A lot of it is almost defensive more than, I mean, the offense has kind of been what they've been.
Yeah, they've been pretty average.
They've been average, right? But the defense has been way better than average.
Yeah.
And so this is speaking to them, be like, what are you going to be?
Right.
What are you going to be this year? Because we're supposed to be a defensive-led team, and that's kind of what Matt Rule has envisioned, right? So the confidence goes to those guys to do what they have been doing before Indiana and a little bit of Illinois. And then establishing a run game sort of solves the next problem, which is like chew up clock, establish physicality, help Dylan get the rush, the pressure, and you play action off. It's all kind of works better towards what we want to do. And we really haven't been able to do that.
No.
Especially lately. So I kind of like that ranking because
yes, I like, so confidence psyche, run game, and then special teams, right?
Yes.
And we don't need to elaborate on this. I mean, it's a disaster. It's got to get better. I mean, it's just got to get better. And it's obviously an enormous concern. Then the last two, the next one I wrote down was a defensive slide. And I'm creating like a thing, but I guess what I'm saying is, and this will maybe real quick, let me hop ahead to this. This is from Brandon Vogel. A couple of things. This is kind of a long, meaty, lot of stats. So really get your like thinking cap on here. So this is from Brandon Vogel. So the Huskers haven't scored more than 30 points against a power conference opponent once in 15 games under the staff. The most the defense has allowed in a win under Rule, any win, is 14 points. So basically, if this defense isn't a top 10 level good, this team as it's currently constructed hasn't won. Stu Manji followed it up with that, who's a good follow on Twitter, with Nebraska's offense is averaging 14 points per game in non-garbage time versus power conference teams under Rule. 14 points per game.
So it's 14 versus 14, essentially. Like, so we're essentially, the black shirts have to hold them under 2 touchdowns to guarantee a win.
So I wanted to kind of throw that out there. So the offense by itself has yet to score more than 24 points in 15 games against power conference teams.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got the gist of what those numbers are, of just like what that illustrates is how much the offense has been poor.
Yeah.
And then because of that, how much the margin for error for this defense is like beyond razor thin. So if there is any between the two, I'll give you two, the spectrum of this defense. You have the first half against Colorado this year, shutting them out, pick 6, sacking Shador, all that. Okay. There's that. And then there's what you saw against Indiana, giving up 56 points, not being able to get off blocks, tackle, whatever. That's the good to the bad of what they are. I think they're closer to the Colorado first half performance than they are the being the team that got 50 hung on them at Indiana. But the reality is, if they think they're going to go to a bowl game or keep winning some of these games, it has to be closer to that Colorado.
Yeah.
And if it's not, so if that's where I'm saying this slide, if all of a sudden there's a bigger slide than we think, and it's more actually like going to perform at a top 30 level or top 40. And I'm just pulling these numbers out.
Yeah,
but I think you get the point.
I mean, I think you're spot on though. Like the offensive points are the points. Like if they're averaging 14 and like we're going to give up 20,
you're going to lose.
We're going to lose. So like one way or another, we've got to find a way to be better than average on defense for us. And I mean, our offense, I mean, we got to be better because even what we're doing currently on offense is not good enough to win. If you're just looking at the numbers, you're good enough to tie, right? So
right.
Like, we have to do something to.
So that's where I am going to just confidence or the defensive slide to me feels like, and maybe this is more of a window into my confidence in the offense being able to kind of get it going. Like I think this offense kind of is what it is a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the upside of this defense is fairly high. And if all of a sudden now this defense is going to start struggling a little bit, they're not going to go to a bowl game.
I mean,
it's
hard to imagine. I mean, I have enough confidence in this team that like they're going to find a way.
So do I.
But golly, it's like those numbers are bad when you hear them.
So you don't have to agree with me, but I put 4 defensive slide, and then I put 5 wide receivers getting open. Just some, Banks, Nair, Lloyd, those guys like finding a way to make plays, get open, make plays, make catches, make life easier for Dylan. Or is there someone else? Do you want to? I wrote down Dylan and then I erased it because I'm like, I'm not concerned about Dylan. I know the easy thing is to probably talk about Dylan, but like, I'm not concerned about Dylan. He's not played well.
Dylan has not played well for Dylan, right? But he is still, even when he plays bad, he's operating on a level better than what we've seen last year. So like, I think if you have to rank concerns, the right thing is maybe like these other things will help Dylan.
Right.
But I think the other things I'm less confident in maybe or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So my 5 would be confidence, team confidence and psyche in terms of concerns, finding a run game, special teams, a defensive slide to being not really, really elite good, and then wide receivers getting open, I guess. Yeah. I didn't know what to do with that 5th spot, but those feel like biggest looming concerns for this team right now.
Or secondary tackling, maybe?
Yeah. Like we've said, there's been especially from the safeties, like those guys tackling.
It was leaky. It was leaky from the cornerbacks and it was bad from the safeties. Like, I don't know. To me, something's going on there that needs to get shorn up. I mean, I think you can say receivers, like they just gotta show up.
Yeah, but
receivers gotta show up. Barney helps that cause, but like they just can't go. We can't go quiet for a whole couple games like they've been.
Right, because they are very boom. Like there's been when Barney and Banks disappear. I mean, they really disappear. Or sorry, Banks and Nair, when they disappear, they really disappear.
Yeah,
but you're right. There is those secondary guys, like they didn't play well against Illinois and they did not play well against Indiana.
Indiana started to look like they were going after them,
right.
Like just those back shoulder fades is like, we think we got the matchup we like. Here it comes,
or one-on-one tackle situation.
Yeah.
They didn't bring them down.
Yeah.
They would get blocked, all those things. But yeah, you could say wide receivers getting open, tackling. You could those 1A or 5A, 5B in terms of concerns. But it's interesting that I was curious if my number one concern is the team confidence and psyche.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Real quick before we get into just a little bit about this game. Do you maybe want to see more Harburg, like as a way to jumpstart this offense and this rushing attack? Does Nebraska need more Harburg Wildcat stuff? I was very anti this, but as I've watched this offense struggle and I've watched this offense be unable to run the ball, I guess I'm more open to it now than I've ever been.
It's fine. It's a nice change of pace, but you just got to remember, like the ball goes out of Dylan's hands.
Yeah, agreed.
More. Like it's fine. It's not to me the answer because I watched that game last year, and that was a whole season of it. Like, I know what it is. It's fine. Right. It's a nice change of pace. I think it's a good part of our package, but that's not the answer to the season's problems, right?
Yeah, that's not going to. I have a hard time feeling like, what saved the season was running Harburg in at the Wildcat quarterback spot 4 or 5 times a game.
No, it's a nice changeup.
But do you think it's a worthwhile venture to?
Sure. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. You're not very.
I'm not enthusiastic about it at all.
Your enthusiasm is not very high with that.
Nick, I love the Harburg idea.
No, but I'm with. You're kind of where I was the whole year. Have been very like anytime they brought him in to do anything. Like I get it's kind of like fun, but I've always kind of been like I've rolled my eyes a little bit at a lot of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like we got Dylan. Like my mind's on Dylan. Like I want.
But they got to be able to run the ball, Bo.
They got to be able to run the ball, but like it can't only be from the quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, we got to be able to have Dylan hand it off or play action. Like I want the action to be
right.
Like repeatable and hard to predict for the defense. I want the defense to be like, are they going to run? Are they going to pass? Is that the runner pass? Like halfway through, they don't know. Like I like that because as a defender, it's hard to defend.
Because it then scares me to be like, well, maybe you need to bring in Harburg and show that you'll throw it a few times on like do a true RPO and have him throw it. But then I'm like,
then Dylan's out of the game.
Then I'm like, I'd rather have just Dylan throw the ball.
That's the point. Like it's it becomes like you got like the guy that handles the ball is the guy. It's your guy, right? And so the more Harburg handles it, the less Dylan does.
Okay. I think I'm with you because my reluctance has been there all year. As I look at the offensive lack of productivity, I'm like, I guess at this point you're open for whatever. Like, what do you got to do? Bring in somebody to.
Harburg gets us 21 a game, give him the ball. I just right mind. I'm having a hard time seeing it.
Yeah. Okay, Nebraska, Ohio State, 5-1. Their only losses at Oregon. I rewatched just the highlights of those games. Like, that was a whale of a football. There's some good fucking football players on that field. Their offense, here are the numbers. They're 6th in total offense, 18th in passing offense, 20th in rush offense, 6th in scoring offense. They average 43 points per game. Defensively, their numbers are really good defensively. 2nd in total defense.
Oh, their defense is good.
Yeah. Defensively, their numbers are like, holy moly. 3rd in scoring defense. They're only giving up 11 points per game. 6th in rush defense. 12th in pass defense. Their quarterback, for people that don't know, Will Howard, Kansas State transfer, 6'4", 235, big, strong guy. 73% completion percentage on the year, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He can run. I was a fan of Will Howard at Kansas State. I don't think this guy he's a little, he's not the pro prospect that some of the Ohio State teams of the past have had, but this is still a very good quarterback. Keep in mind, their offensive coordinator is none other than Chip Kelly. So right now, you're like the thought of Chip being in a room looking at tape of Nebraska's defense against Indiana. I feel like he's like the Tasmanian devil.
Man, it's
a little concerning.
So they got Jeremiah Smith.
Yep.
Egbuka. I mean, he was. I watched him a lot last year. He's a good player. I mean, he's real good. And then you got Henderson was supposed to be their guy, but actually Judkins has more yards. But
Henderson's still good too.
He's good.
Yeah.
These are good. These are big time players all across the board. So like if we had trouble with Indiana, like these guys are probably better.
Oh yeah.
And there's more of them. I mean, 2 running backs, 2 receiver. I mean, dude, like we're gonna have our hands full. Like we better be ready to play.
Yeah. Again, they're just a better version of Indiana in terms of talent. Now I don't know if they're gonna go out there and do what Indiana did. I mean, you still got to go execute and do it and make throws, make catches, all those things. You get it, but don't kid yourself. There's a lot more NFL. There's gonna be a lot more NFL players on the field that Nebraska going against this Saturday than last Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a great mindset for this game, but it's also the coordinators are going to have to call a great game because I feel like when you have a talent mismatch, like they're going to be more talented than us. Like we have to call a better game to keep us in the game. It's
such a good point. You're right. Like you have to, that talent gap has to get made up for in probably coaching scheme, play calling,
strategy
like,
of like muck it up probably.
Right.
That's probably what we're going to have to do.
Like I always think about the 2021 Huskers, like they kind of like Ohio State came to town with like, remember how good those Olave and all the, like they were those wide receivers out of this world good, but the Nebraska kept them at bay and hung in there. And so, they're going to have their hands full. So the spread is 25.5. The over under, the total is 48.5. I guess I'll just, there's not a lot. This game's pretty straightforward. I think a lot of it, like you said, that Tony White and Marcus Satterfield need to be on their A game to the umpteenth degree. But I feel like I've said this a million times over the course of the last 5-10 years. But to circle back to our biggest concern, confidence and psyche. This game, Nebraska, I think, is going to lose this game. I have a hard time even conjuring any scenario in my head where Nebraska emerges victorious in this game. So Nebraska is going to lose. It feels like the question is just, what does it look like? So I said this a million times, but Nebraska has to get off to a good start. I think Nebraska has to have a good first quarter in a major way.
Let me ask you something. You win the toss.
What do you do?
Do you take the ball? Like, are you showing a lack of trust in your defense by doing that, though? But maybe it just might be strategy where you say, we don't want to give their offense a lightning start. You know what I'm saying? Like that, it gives you a chance to just like hold the ball a little bit and like slow. It just turns the game slower versus sometimes if you feel like the offense you're going against is explosive, which, I mean, Indiana's very explosive, but like I look at the talent on this offense and I go, golly,
Lord, yeah. Here's what I would say. I think the right thing to do is to take the ball and have the slowest possession. You go into a 4-minute offense to start the game. Like,
I mean,
but also, and you've been, like we've said, you've been pretty good in scripting.
That's been our best. Our best offense has been our
first drives.
Yeah.
But I don't think Ruud will do that, because I do think Ruud, right or wrong, has been very, very aware of and puts an emphasis on messages to the team, whether it's going for it on 4th down or keeping certain guys in, like some message to them about like, hey, I have confidence in you, or we are going to keep on playing. We're playing to win, whatever that is. So my guess is he'll put his defense out there. He'll defer, and the defense.
I don't know that it's a huge difference.
I don't either, but I mean,
I thought it might be less. It may have been more geared towards Indiana because their defense was their weak. But Ohio State's got a good defense.
Statistically, they're better defensively than they are offensively.
Yeah,
they're both great on both sides.
That tells you maybe that's not a great strategy. I'm just thinking, like, I kind of thought against Indiana they should have taken the ball.
Yep.
But Ohio State, maybe it's not as clear, but something to be considered.
Totally. Yeah. But I think it goes into the spirit of what we're talking about, of like, I think you got to hang in there and have some good things happen for you so you can just try to stay confident early in the game. What you can't have is where you give up a 43-yard run on 3rd and 2 on the first drive. You give up a 4th and 2, a 10-yard slant. You then catch the ball at the 1-yard line on the kickoff. You then fumble at the 12-yard line. Like that's 4 like back-breaking sideshow Bob rake to the face confidence killers, psyche killers for a team whose psyche and confidence is clearly a little fragile. So it is absolutely imperative that the first quarter have some good things happen to you.
I think that's right.
If Nebraska gets off to a bad start, I think this game could easily turn into a bloodbath again. I'm going to be optimistic and say that I think the defense, I think Ty, Polar Bear, Gifford, Bullock, Butler, like those guys, I think they're going to have a little bit of pride here and a little bit of fight. I think they're going to come out and play inspired. I think Ohio State is obviously still going to win. I'm going to say Ohio State wins like 35-10.
I don't think
30-10.
I have a hard time. I would have a hard time betting on us in this one. I do think we'll play better. I can't imagine we're going to lay an egg like we did last week. I think we're going to play better, but I don't know if we got the firepower off and the points we need.
I don't see how they score more than 14 points, more than 10 points.
I don't know. It's tough.
It's hard for me to envision them scoring more than 10 points right now.
It's tough to see it, but I do think they'll play better. They've got to.
So to wrap this up, just a little perspective on some things here. As the sky is falling in Lincoln for everybody right now, the team is still 5-2. And this team's only 2 losses are to 2 ranked teams. You have one was in overtime to an Illinois team who's ranked 20th in the AP poll and just beat Michigan.
Yep.
And the other one was on the road to an undefeated Indiana team who's ranked 13th in the AP poll. Okay. This team statistically was really, really good prior defensively to this Indiana game. And this team still has what I believe to be is a special quarterback. And so you also got to remember, we sat here a week ago and predicted the rest of the season, and you and I both picked 8-4. So for as piss poor as last Saturday was, and for as an alarming and concerning and frustrating as that game was to get embarrassed and blown out again, to me, this team still has, there's still some potential. The season still has some potential. Yeah. This team still has some hope. The season still has some hope. It's not over.
We got to get to 6 wins is all we got to do. One more, and we're making progress.
I told you, I think this was after we turned off the mics. This team, if I were to tell Matt Rule anything, I would say, you got to win one more game, and you got to make sure Dylan Raiola stays.
Yeah.
If long as those 2 things happen, you got to win. You got to find one more win.
Yeah.
And when the season kicks off next year, 15's your quarterback. Yeah. Those 2 things happen. I think the arrow is trending way up for this program, and things are really going in the right direction.
Yep.
But you got to win one more game, and you got to keep Dylan Raiola.
Yes.
As long as those 2 things happen, everything's all gravy.
I do too. It's all good. We just got to hey, it's not panic. The panicking is the part that's not good. I don't know that we're helping it, but you know what I'm saying? But
I also think
that's what we do. We're just talking through it.
Well, yeah, but I also think you and I have been, I'd like to think we're pretty reasonable with how we talk about things.
No doubt.
That was bad.
We just talk about it like we see it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this podcast. It's it is the same way we would talk if there were no mics. It's the same thing.
Yes.
This is the same conversation. So to me, it's it's not panicking, right? It's not, but I think there are people that do.
Mm-hmm.
And the players can feel it. Now the question is how good are they at ignoring it? Because that's a skill in itself.
Totally.
And not ignoring it will hurt your performance.
Yeah.
So they got to ignore it.
Well, there we go. 3 safeties, Arizona State, 1996. How about that?
Hey, that's wild. I'm still shocked.
I'm still shocked by that. Okay. So we will be back. Hopefully we're not talking about another massacre. We'll see what happens. It's going to be fun to see how it goes. I mean,
yeah. There's the slam poetry starting.
Oh, let's go.
Nayer.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.